Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Hammond, and I am the chair of the worship arts team here at East Shore Unitarian Universalist Church in Kirtland, Ohio. Thank you for joining us here today beneath our beacon and on Facebook Live. Whether you are a member or friend of our congregation, whether you join us every Sunday or only occasionally, thank you. Whether we've known you for decades or you've met us for the first time today, whether you are with us here under the beacon or you join us from your own sacred space, you are welcome here. Acknowledging your skin color, ancestry, and expressions of gender, your net worth, your political opinions, and the people you love, and the long and winding journey that brought you here this morning, you are welcome. May this be a time of reflection and renewal, a time to live into our mission to love, revere, discover, and connect. We welcome a guest minister this morning, one of the many ministers who are helping us out over the course of this time, Reverend George Buchanan, a lifelong Unitarian Universalist. He is Canadian, born in Ottawa with childhood and teenage years spent in suburban Montreal. In 2006, George was ordained in the Unitarian Universalist ministry and moved to the U.S. He served in several UU ministries in Ohio and Western New York. George and his wife Carrie live in Northeast Ohio. They have 2 adult children and 3 grandchildren. Their children live in other cities, and so they relax at home with their books and papers and serve on the staff of one completely spoiled cat. This summer, George retired from active ministry in the summer of 2022. He and Carrie plan to retire back to Canada near Ottawa. George's ministry interests include congregational development, deep adaptation, and the wisdom of indigenous nations of North America. So be on the lookout for how that affects everything today. We are still in a place during this ongoing pandemic where we are asking that the congregation not sing along, but the choir will continue to sing, and we ask that you join the choir in reading along with the lyrics in the gray hymnals as our guest pianist, Julie Green, choir director at the local high school, Kenston High School. So please open up your gray hymnals to number 349, We Gather Together.
Good morning, everyone. And if any of you can't hear me, just wave in the back. We're still all getting used to the face masks and doing this way. For me, just while I say personally, this building and this space has so many wonderful memories. I preached here before to warm reception. I thank you, and also I served as co-leader as a youth camp here back 7, 8 years ago. So it's a wonderful space and much appreciated by me and many others. And thank you, Jared, for the introduction. And I would ask you to begin our worship, to ask me to join in a spirit of reflection and prayer. Great Spirit of life, ever present everywhere, may our hearts be open to the beauty of our beloved earth. As we begin this autumn season, let's rest among the wonder and the mystery of the fiery colors all around us. And may our hearts be also open to the wonders and mystery of community and congregational life. We approach all these wonders with humility and great awe. There is so much we don't understand, and still much for us to do, even with our limited understanding. In this spirit, let's begin worship together. I'm talking about hope today, so I chose the chalice lighting appropriate for that. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike. Thanks, dear. We gather this hour as people of faith. With joys and sorrows, gifts and needs, we light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together.
One of the ways in which we share together in this sacred space of worship is to share our joys and cares, the milestones of our lives, and the difficult parts of life that we share with each other so that we don't have to face any of those burdens alone. And we often place those things in this book here, which sits often on a pedestal out in the narthex for anyone to write any of those joys or concerns into. And today we have one that Ricky Beck's brother is feeling better after cardiac surgery. So we're all excited for that, and we hope he continues to do well, and we look forward to seeing Ricky again when she returns. So for this and all of the joys and cares left unspoken, we will observe a moment of silence. And as we do so, I invite you to hold in your hand a stone. If you brought one with you this morning, or grabbed one from the bowl at the top of the aisle, or if you'd like to do that now. Whether it be a symbol of the hope that you hold on to, or an object in which you might imbue those feelings of joy or concern. Hold on to this stone as we observe this moment of silence, and when the singing bowl sounds, I invite you to join me in placing that stone in the bowl at the center of our worship space underneath our beacon to eventually be returned to the grounds here at East Shore, to always be a part of this community.
This reading is words from a man who was an Indigenous elder and chief in Canada during the 20th century. His name is Tatanga Mani, which translates as walking buffalo, and he was a chief of the Stoney Nation, which is in Alberta in Canada. And he actually was born before the destruction of the buffalo herd, so he saw some of the great buffalo herds in the American and Canadian West, and then lived through many of the things that came afterwards. Anyway, here are some words of his in his old age after deep reflection. We saw the Great Spirit's work in almost everything: sun, moon, wind, mountains. Sometimes we approach the Great Spirit through these things. Nature is the book of that great power which one might call God and which we call the Great Spirit. But what difference does a name make? We had none of your denominations to split us, to introduce hatreds in the name of religion. We have no man-made guides to right living. Nature was our guide. Nature is still my Bible, and I've just returned after spending many days studying it. Hence the words of Tatanga Mani.
Good morning. In the best of times, it sometimes is hard to understand the words when the choir sings the anthem. And this is not the best of times for articulating words behind masks. So I'm going to read you the words to the autumn hymn that we are about to sing for you. The music is by Barbara Owen, and the words are by Walter Royal Jones Jr. When summer green is fading and winds blow brisk and free, a wealth of autumn glories recall us, God, to thee. From flaming bush and headland, the woodland's gold array, the captured light of summer shines back to skies grown gray. Ahead the cold and darkness, the winter snow and storm, but autumn radiance tokens thine inward fire to warm. No matter how we tremble amid the darkness then, where love shines in, the shadow light shall break forth again. Thou singer, in the rhythms that echo in our hearts, we glimpse thee in the beauty the changing year imparts. Let loveliness in autumn to us assurance be, that joy knows many seasons in hearts attuned to thee. Amen.
congregations have in the past been communities where hope has been cultivated and sustained among us. I call them houses of hope, and I think that's true whether the congregations had a particular building or not. Like this congregations all over North America have been beacons of religious liberty, spiritual freedom, and free inquiry. They've been havens of mutual care and respect. They've been culture beds of movements for peace and justice. And having spent some time visiting here over the years and working here a little bit, I know this congregation fits that bill. So the question this morning is, can our U congregations continue to be houses of hope in this sense? After all, it's a really tough world, and it's getting tougher. We see the pandemic, which is very present right now among us all. But we've also got the predicament of climate change, conflicts over scarce resources. And there is a real concern over the ongoing existence of human society in any form that we would think was worthwhile. In spite of all these difficulties, I believe that, yes, we can continue to be houses of hope. And I want to talk about how and in what way. Even in the face of all the predicaments and problems and conflicts that humanity faces, I believe our liberal religious congregations can continue to be communities of freedom, love, and justice. What were the 4 elements that are on your t-shirt? Love, revere, discover, and connect. Do I have that right? Thank you. We can do those things together. I think there's real and genuine hope. But there's some work we need to do to understand hope properly in these circumstances. So let me start with something that is foundational for me, which is Dr. King's image of the beloved community. I'm a Canadian, but it's not a but, and still I know how much Dr. King is revered all around the world as well as here in the United States. Dr. King talked about the beloved community, and that's something we can all subscribe to. And I'm defining love here as my willingness to extend myself for another, or for myself. So love is that willingness to make that extension. African-American thinker and scholar and public intellectual Cornel West says that justice is what love looks like in public. So if you've got a loving community, then justice is the outflowing of that into public institutions. So love and justice go together like that. And that's part of Dr. King's dream, part of his vision. And I believe we can still hope and pray for the beloved community in our families, in our congregations, and in the broader communities all around us. But we have to work harder at hope than we have in the past, I think. And I start from the work of Joanna Macy. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with her work. In a book that she co-wrote with Chris Johnstone. The book is, called Act of Hope, How to Face the Mess We're In Without Going Crazy. And these 2 wise people make a distinction between, there's 2 kinds of hope. We consider the odds of some desirable outcome and say we are more hopeful if this outcome is more likely. So we can say that, oh, well, we kind of hope that the Cavs are going to win the NBA championship this year. Or even more desperately, we could say, well, the Browns are going to be in the Super Bowl. But, so there's that kind of hope. And then there's what they call active hope. That is, we actively desire an outcome and are willing to take action to change our approaches to make this more likely. Let me give you some examples. Imagine it's spring, and I know it's fall, but just work with me here. And I have a backyard where I've just planted a vegetable garden. I can vaguely suggest I hope the vegetables will flourish and produce lots of food, and my hope is justified because last summer was kind of rainy and had lots of good weather for growing. Or, this is the act of hope part, I can start watering and weeding and checking soil chemistry and planning for more of the same. So if I take this approach, as I said, this is act of hope. Macy and Johnstone, the authors of this book, identify act of hope as a practice. They say it's like Tai Chi or gardening. It's something we do rather than something we have. So act of hope is something we do rather than have. Now, maybe these two authors also point out that it's possible to practice, and this is really important, to practice act of hope even on projects where we're not sure of the odds of success, at least when we start. Pardon me, if you think about my backyard example, I might be gardening with poor soil or lots of pests, or my plantings might be experimental. It could be a crop I've never grown before. With substantial risk, the crop might not flourish. Let me give you an example of act of hope here in a community sense. It's a small but important one. When I drove in today, I was struck, because I hadn't been here for several years, by the silent witnesses that you have right inside the road. And now I understand you are doing a collection to support Forbes House. And on your part, these are actions of act of hope because you're affecting the outcome of how well Forbes House is able to provide shelter for those who need it. So that's an example of act of hope that you folks are doing. And I hope and pray that this will be a successful effort. Pardon me. Now we need to talk about some things. Let me finish that off. So there's active hope, which is the things we can influence. And then this is way overgeneralizing, but there's also optimism wise. And optimism is more about, I joked about the Cavs and the Browns, but it can also be optimism about how Joe Biden's climate change program is going to go, or anything like that that's so big we don't have any control over. So that's in my book, that's optimism, and over there is active hope. Some things that hope is not. Hope is not hope for an afterlife. I believe our communal work is for the beloved community here in this life, here on this beloved earth of ours. If you want hope about an afterlife, you'll have to get a different minister in. That's not my thing. It's not hope for a sure thing. You folks are working hard, I believe, to do a search for a new minister for you starting in less than a year from now. And I know your previous search didn't get the result you wanted, but I still believe that you can actively hope for success there. And I hope and pray that you will find that success. And this hope is not optimism about the future in general. It's not hope for a middle-class future for all the young people that we care about here among us and around us. Brian Stevenson, who's an activist, a legal activist, and American scholar, African-American scholar, he put it this way, I think this is really important. He said, the opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. Poverty, justice. And I think of this in terms of my grandchildren. Jared mentioned we have grandchildren. I have 3 beautiful guys under the age of 10. And I wish for them every good thing. But I know that they're not going to have the same sort of privileges and opportunities that I did. None of the kids their own age will have those same possibilities. Or I certainly can't naively believe that all of them will. And if if all of them don't, then none of them will. So, as much as it breaks my heart, I know that my grandchildren aren't going to have a lot of problems that I didn't have to face. What I can work towards is Dr. King's goal, which is beloved community, just and loving community, with whatever material goods we all need to live justly. I also know, and this is sometimes difficult to hear, but I think it's deeply true, hope is where the hurt is. The hope and the hurt are right like that. Hope is where the love is. There's much of pain and suffering in our world, and some of this pain is among us here today. Many are grieving, many are afraid, many are angry, and legitimately so in all those things. Now, a community such as this one can't remove those hurts, but we can be the ones to listen, to hold, and to nurture. And I know from my own experience that this congregation does this. To make one last point about hope before we close, it's about self-care. At times in my own life, I've allowed troubles and doubt to overwhelm my self-care and my hope, not a good plan. And I hark back to Jesus of Nazareth, who we all seem to think was a pretty wise man. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. And he didn't say love your neighbor more than yourself or less than yourself. He said love your neighbor as yourself. The just and loving world that we all hope for, this will be cultivated and sustained by those who are finding ways to creatively balance self-care for themselves with care for others, even in the most difficult and troubling days. And I know this truth about self-care in my deepest heart, and still sometimes I let troubles and doubt overwhelm me. My heart needs help sometimes to remember. Hence the sermon, as so often sermons from ministers are messages that they need to hear themselves. So to close, I would close with a brief prayer form. I hope and pray this congregation, this gathered community, will continue as a place to come together to nurture meaning, hope, and reverence for the earth and to pursue a more just and loving world. May it be so.
I feel comfortable saying that we here desire to be a house of hope, a beacon for a beloved community, a place that loves others as ourselves, gives of our extra time in the spirit of those who have less, gives of our extra effort for those who have less to give, and give of our extra financial resources, again, for those who have less to give. I invite you to give generously today as the baskets pass you, except, of course, if you are a guest here with us this morning. If this is your first time here with us this morning, then I welcome you to let the collection basket pass you as our guest. Let this be our gift to you, in the hopes that this is a community where you might find home. thank you for these gifts and all of the active hope that you pour into this congregation, this community. Please know that these gifts, these financial resources, will be used wisely by your Board of Trustees.
Started us off with wisdom from a Canadian Indigenous elder in the 20th century. I'll finish off with these words from our current day Indigenous elder and leader who lives in the United States. His name is Stephen Charleston. He is a Choctaw elder, lives in Oklahoma, and he's also retired recently as the Anglican bishop, the Episcopal bishop, there's Canadian, the Episcopal Bishop of Alaska. Here's what he has to say. Hope is our home. One of the greatest dangers to the free spirit is discouragement. The lighthearted soul can be slowly pulled down by the gravity of despair, the feeling that goodness will never overcome evil, that justice will be subverted by power, that common sense has been lost in the madness of the crowd. In times such as these, looking up towards the open sky of the human spirit becomes liberating. There is no earthly force that can pull us down as long as we fly toward the vision that first set us free. When we refuse to give in, others will see us. They will take wing themselves and join us. Hope is not only the horizon, it is our home. Hope is our home.
So with that, I invite you all to rise as you are willing and able, join hands as you feel comfortable with the people around you, and we will join in reciting our bond of union. We join
hands in Unitarian Universalist fellowship, pledging ourselves to individual religious freedom, which transcends all creeds, not to think alike, but to journey together.
Bye, Internet friends.